This is the Weekly Squeeze, and I'm your talented and congested host, Chanale, coming at you from the beautiful land of Israel with episode 213. Welcome back. Thank you for liking and subscribing to my YouTube channel. Put those thumbs away. Well, the war is over, at least in my house, as my kids are finally all back in school. My youngest goes ahead and gets a full-blown virus that kept him home for the entire week, begging for the PlayStation. I said no. I was very strict. PlayStation and Hamas have a lot in common. They both turn children into psychopaths. My second kid, well, her school was closed because the teachers were on strike. I bet you didn't hear that the high school teachers here in Israel were on strike the first week of school. That doesn't sound like something Israelis would do at all. Despite the war, despite the economy, despite the heat, despite the parents losing their minds, the teachers were not going back to work until they got a raise, but my daughter's back in school, so I don't know if they got a raise or they gave up, but I don't even care. She's back in school, and yeah, it's finally quiet in my house all week long. That's Sunday. Yes, we have school on Sunday here in Israel, and Monday, and half of Tuesday, and Wednesday, and Thursday, and half of Friday. So I'll take what I could get, but I am counting my blessings. Speaking of blessings, we are all blessed. We are blessed to wake up in the morning and not be Candace Owens. Like if you woke up this morning and you did not see the Wicked Witch of the West looking back at you, it's a blessed day. I don't know why I'm talking like that. Look at me, I'm Kamala Harris. My point is there's always what to be grateful for. And if you're not feeling it, look around and see the nation of Israel, the way we are moving forward and rebuilding. Look at the growth in the last 11 months. I mean, I was at a Nefesh B'Nefesh influencer meetup last week, and it was so beautiful to see so many activists, social media warriors getting together to make working and personal relationships. Brian Spivak was there, and that was cool because he's my guest this week. And we spoke about just that, how we can move forward and help each other in the creative space, in the business world, as influencers on and offline. Yes, we exist in flesh and blood, and we're all really much cooler in real life. And we spoke about keeping and creating positivity and success and growth in all of our lives, because that's what healing looks like. And Brian knows what healing looks like. So yeah, you're going to enjoy. We had a very emotional conversation that you don't want to miss. That's coming up later in the show. But in any case, hello to all the influencers watching today's episode. Say hi in the comments, especially if you've been on this podcast. The Jewish Nomads, Aliza Ben Shalom, the host of The Jewish Matchmaker on Netflix, Rudy Rockman. The room was full of great people helping Am Yisrael and each other heal as we remind ourselves of our mission to fill the world with light and increase in acts of goodness and kindness. This week's episode of the Weekly Squeeze has been brought to you by the Heartland Initiative, an organization based in the heartland of Israel, Yehuda and Shomron, that is dedicated to forging stronger connections for transformative impact. At Heartland, we believe that real change starts with building bridges through public diplomacy, education, and grassroots social impact projects. We're on a mission to fight antisemitism, secure human rights, and cultivate cultural connections by bringing together international leaders, philanthropists, and professionals who share a commitment to a better world. From enhancing quality of life to creating lasting cooperation, our work transcends boundaries and fosters genuine, transformative change. Join us in our journey to strengthen not just Israel, but global connections that elevate us all. To learn more, visit heartlandinitiative.org and be a part of the movement that makes a difference. All right. So this week, Candy Owe takes it to a whole new low. How low can you go? This week, she decided to go after one of the most beloved figures in modern Judaism, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. It's pronounced Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. The Rebbe, the spiritual leader of the Chabad Lubavitch movement. That's right. She went after a man whose entire legacy is about spreading Jewish joy and inclusivity around the world. And I know this because I grew up in Lubavitch. And what does Candy Owe do? Well, she labels the Rebbe a hate monger who preached Jewish supremacism. Let's get this straight. So Candace, who is best friends with white nationalists, Kanye West, defends Hitler, and now is questioning the Holocaust altogether, she decided that she has the moral ground to lecture us about hate and war. Girl, you're out your cotton picking mind. No, it's not racist, because I don't think your grandparents picked cotton. And even if they did, my grandparents were killed in the Holocaust, and I'm a dirty Zionist, and nobody cares. So despite being thrown out on her tuchus from the Daily Wire, despite the GOP running away from her as fast as their little old white bodies can run, despite that she's practically the most unlikable person on the internet, now she's pretending to be an authority on Jewish theology. When she took to Pierce's Morgan show, what I like to call the Jerry Springer of talk news, that's not a compliment, and she sat all angry and hostile, ranting and raving that Lubavitcher should accept her God as Messiah. She literally said she hopes we convert to Christianity. Now, let's talk about how Chabad responded, because they took the high road, something Candace can learn from. So they went online and they posted all over their social medias, reminding everyone that the Rebbe was an incredible human being who saw the value in each and every person, Jew or non-Jew, and that his door was open to everyone who seeked guidance. And they didn't even mention her name because honestly, she doesn't deserve it. Instead, they shared the Rebbe's teachings about common human kinship, a concept Candace knows nothing about because all she wants to do is pit people against each other. Do you think she backed down? No, she didn't back down from taking on one of the biggest Jewish organizations in the world. Of course not. She doubled down and she tweets out an out-of-context soundbite from a Farbrengen. That's a Lubavitch gathering, a Hasidic gathering of a Rebbe and his Hasidim, where the Rebbe is speaking of such lofty comments, even I don't understand some of these ideas. But Candace, she's a Mekubal, and she's a Talmudist because she reads books. Well, whatever you're reading that led you to smear the Rebbe, a holy man who dedicated his life to making the world a better place, those are not good books. They're not good books written by not good people, so stop it. But let's be real, guys. Candace isn't interested in a conversation. She doesn't want to talk. She wants to yell. She talks at people. This is just show business. She's not a serious person. She's an actress. And actress Owens is breaking the bank. She's making a lot of money. I mean, for show business, people do anything. So why is this any different? This is a brand of performative outrage that a lot of talk show hosts across America are engaged in. The more outlandish, the better. Facts be darned. She doesn't care that the Rebbe inspired the whole world, Jewish and non-Jewish alike, that the Rebbe spearheaded the food stamp program, did you know that? And had positive and deep ties with the African-American community leaders and politicians. I mean, seriously, Candace, Google the Rebbe. Did you even Google the Rebbe? Did you even go on the internet to look up who the Rebbe was? It's laughable. I mean, if it wasn't so infuriating. Because what Candace is doing is actually very dangerous. She is, at the end of the day, peddling anti-Semitic tropes for attention. It doesn't matter what her intention is. But it's under the guise of truth-telling. That's it. It's truth. Here you can find the truth. And her fans eat it up, and her listeners eat it up. And all she's doing is fanning the flames of anti-Semitism. And this time, she didn't just attack a tzaddik, she attacked a whole community that, for the record, continues to stand up for kindness, unity, and faith of all mankind. But Candace is busy with clicks and clout, and all she wants to do is rile up her fan base of conspiracy theorists and bored housewives and online trolls to be her little minions. So here's my message to all you haters on your podcast platforms all over the place. You're not bold truth tellers. You're provocateurs who thrive on division and misinformation. You claim to stand against hate, but you're all about hate. You want other people to hate each other because then they'll come to you so you can whine and gripe about it. You're not speaking truth. You are lying through your big, fat, white veneers. So who has the truth? Where is the truth? What is the truth? How do we find the truth? Everyone's yelling they have the truth. Well, the truth is with Israel. And if you're not standing with Israel, you've lost your way. End of story. That's it. Stop trying to throw Palestinian babies into it. By the way, as far as the Palestinian babies go, 14,000 murdered Palestinian kids, Candace said on Pierce Morgan to millions of people. Well, that's fake news. According to a new report, we actually unalived 17,000 terrorists. Okay, since the war began. If you want to talk about numbers on your show, you can talk about the 1,664 Israelis, including 706 IDF soldiers who have been killed since October 7th. We're a tiny country. Everyone is family. 143,000 Israeli citizens are not living in their homes. Massive neighborhoods have been evacuated. Neighborhoods all over Israel, and towns, and villages, and cities because of Hezbollah rockets that bombard them nonstop. 20,000 rockets and drones have been launched at Israel. Rockets and drones are not little firecrackers. They're flying warfare the size of washing machines and refrigerators and buses designed to explode and do tremendous damage. And we have 101 hostages still being held. I'm sick and tired of talking about anti-Semitism. I really am. I once did a story on this podcast about a website where you look out different windows around the world. Like, that was the show. That was the story. But here we are talking about anti-Semitism every single day. It's because they don't leave us alone. They don't leave us alone. By the way, 3 more Israelis were murdered yesterday by a terrorist with a Jordanian passport. Same garbage, all these terrorists. 3 innocent people. Innocent Israeli Jews. Speaking of verkakte human beings, Mark Barfalo tweeted this week. He tweeted, "Neither Hirsch Goldberg Poland nor a Sinor Egan Agi would be dead today if it wasn't for the USA's failed policies concerning the continued siege on Gaza, Netanyahu, and the IDF's blah, blah, blah. If Biden had remained steadfast to American law, his own policies concerning military aid, his red lines, and the world outcry, please, they're sheep. His ability to use American law to leverage a ceasefire, these beautiful young people would be alive today." Okay, Hirsch would be alive if Hamas had not kidnapped him and amputated him and tortured him and starved him and then executed him. So if Hamas had left him alone and let him dance at the party and be able to go home to his parents, he would be alive today. And you wouldn't be able to tweet this garbage, you dumbbell. I know, I see these tweets and they really get under my skin. Twitter has become, or X, a cesspool of deranged anti-Semites literally coming up with whatever they can. They just throw up and see whatever sticks. And it's getting under my skin. All right, let's shift gears to a story that caught my eye that I thought was very funny. Maybe you won't. I thought it was hilarious. The IDF has launched an investigation after civilians visiting a military base in southern Israel reportedly gave soldiers cookies laced with hashish, a form of marijuana. 3 soldiers who consumed the cookies fell ill and were treated at a local clinic, but fortunately they recovered without needing hospitalization. Military police are now looking into the incident, and the IDF has stated that procedures will be tightened to prevent accepting unauthorized food donations in the future. This comes as a reminder that even well-meaning gifts can sometimes go unexpectedly awry. Okay, first of all, it wasn't me, because I don't bake brownies, not even for my kids. I make IDF parties. Donate in the show notes. Imagine the briefing. Soldiers, today we are cracking down on ugiot. No more cookies. How did someone think sending laced brownies to the IDF would be a good idea? And imagine it had gone well and the soldiers would have killed a lot of terrorists that day. Then we'd all have to raise money for ganja for the IDF. That's what would be happening online on social media. All right, Corey Gil Schuster. I had him on this podcast. Corey Gil Schuster is a Canadian Jew. He goes to the West Bank and he speaks to Arabs about what they really think about Israelis. So he released a 12-minute video on YouTube. I'm not going to be sharing any clips here because I don't want any lying Palestinians on my YouTube channel at all. How they are demonizing Israel, lying straight to the cameras. These people lie through their teeth. They're professional liars. They lie to themselves. It doesn't have to be the truth. They could just decide this is the narrative and go with it and then believe it. That's what they have in common with progressives and the leftists that are just rewriting the laws of humanity as they see fit. Everything is just what you want it to be, what you feel it should be, what your religion tells you it should be. They're not lying to our faces. I mean, they're being oppressed. But they are lying to your faces, and they're not being oppressed. And we are not the oppressors. They just decide that this is the narrative, and they believe it. We are not the oppressors. Jews are not violent. Arabs are violent, but Jews, as a culture, are not violent. And that brings me to 2 nice Jewish boys. I had them on my podcast. They're the longest running English podcast in Israel. And I was just disgusted by a smear campaign against them. From a video clip of them talking about the Palestinian people that went viral. And boy, did people pounce like vultures. And they don't want to hear it. And it's just beyond disgusting what they did to two nice Jewish boys. And I stand with them. There are terrorists in our jails that deserve a cactus up their behinds. We are way too nice to them. They're terrorists. They do terrible things to other human beings. That's it. I stand with two nice Jewish boys. They're a niche podcast. They're expressing their deep frustrations. We're all deeply frustrated with these verkackte Palestinians and Jordanians or whatever the heck they are. Okay? You are being played. You are being played by Candace Owens. You're being played by anti-Semites all around the world who will use whatever means possible to dehumanize the Jew. That's what this is about. They have no lives. When was the last time you spent more than 30 seconds thinking about the Mormons or Hinduism? But Candace Owens is busy thinking about the Mishachis in 770. Okay, there's other communities to criticize. Anyone remember Big Love on HBO? But this is the strategy that is innate within the Jew hater, the devious little weasel spewing blood libels in his parents' basement, or the wealthy mainstream news anchor who dips his toe in Holocaust denial. They all have the same agenda. It's not to help us, it's to destroy us. The anti-Semite wants to see us gone, and that's why my grandmother's family was violently wiped off this earth by the same Poles who were once their neighbors. Did anyone try to get my Bubby's house back when the Poles took it from her, even though my great-grandfather was a wealthy Pole who owned his own house? But the Arabs, who, by the way, could live in any hole, suddenly they have to have their land back. It's lies. It's fake. It's just their will to dehumanize us. Or else how could they get rid of us? They have to demonize us. They have to demonize the IDF. They have to demonize the Torah, and they have to demonize the Talmud, and they have to demonize the Rebbe because they're evil and they have no bottom. And Kanye West has literally no life. And that's why the Jew hate you're seeing is relentless. 11 months of anguish for Israel. But they're the victims, running around vandalizing everything day in and day out like a bunch of Vilda Chayas. And they'll never stop. The anti-Semite loves to watch you empty your pockets while he yells thief. They loathe that we defend ourselves. They loathe that we matter so much to one another. They just want all of us to stop mattering so much. But we never will. We are the Jewish people. We are the center of the universe. We are, in fact, the chosen nation because it says so in the Bible. I didn't make it up. I didn't write it. As a matter of fact, considering the situation in Israel, sometimes I wish he wouldn't have chosen me. But he chose us, all of us, even Shmuley Boteach. And we're all created in his image, even Candace Owens. And that's why today I choose to be optimistic, because I know the truth. And if you're watching this, you know the truth. And it's not because I'm telling you so, but because Hashem, the Torah, the Jewish people, we are one. We are a holy nation, Am Kadosh, a righteous nation that holds ourselves to a higher standard. And that's why we fight for peace, even as they shoot missiles at us and stab us in the streets and run over us with cars and split our head open with axes and shoot us point blank in the heads or throw boulders on our cars while we drive. So even though they kidnapped our children and violated our daughters, we're still going to fight for peace. Because if we don't, who's going to do it? Because from what I'm seeing, nobody. I don't see any other army who could fight with the dignity that the IDF does. I don't see any other nation that could take the abuse that we do and still be the first responders when Turkey has an earthquake. I don't see any other faith that would survive such a blow like 10/7 with such dignity and self-restraint and courage. It's Israel against evil. It's the Jew against the Hitlers of the world. Killing people is wrong. We don't want to hurt anyone. So if you could just back up and leave us all alone, nobody will get hurt. Seriously, like Yechiel says, get a job, because this is out of control and we really want it to stop. Y'all out of control. And as far as our politics, well, that's none of your business, okay? It's not Israel's fault. But if you're not supporting Israel, then it just might be yours. Today we have a really inspiring guest with us. Brian Spivak is here. Brian's a tech sales and partnership pro whose life took a dramatic turn just 5 months ago when he decided to quit his job and fully dedicate himself to a cause that matters deeply to him. He jumped in to lead the influencer program at the Hostage Forum, advocating for the release of 250 hostages. Seeing the challenges pro-Israel influencers faced, losing partnerships and income, Brian did not just sit back. He took action and founded Barzel Media, an agency that supports these influencers, creators, and brands in all kinds of ways. Originally from the U.S. and now living in Tel Aviv, Brian's a single dad raising 2 daughters while staying deeply involved in his community. He's not just a busy parent, he's also out there leading, speaking, and making a difference. In his downtime, Brian's an active guy, whether it's traveling, hitting the ice for some hockey, snowboarding, playing tennis, or just enjoying the vibrant life of Tel Aviv, from its beautiful beaches to its buzzing social scene. But what really stands out about Brian is how he makes the most of every moment. He's all about personal growth and giving back. At his local Chabad in Tel Aviv, Brian takes on leadership roles, from sharing insights during Shabbat services to stepping up as a security lead during critical times. Brian's story is about resilience, community, and living with purpose. So let's dive in and hear from the man himself, Brian Spivak. Brian Spivak, welcome to the Weekly Squeeze. Thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Chanale. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for coming out to Rinky Dink Beit Shemesh. How was the train ride?
Actually quite nice. Yeah, beautiful. I don't think I've ever taken the train to Beit Shemesh, so that's a first.
I don't know if that's a compliment or it just means you're very busy or you'd never want to leave Tel Aviv where you live. What's so awesome about Tel Aviv? I'm not a Tel Avivian, but yeah, everyone I know who's from Tel Aviv is obsessed.
Yeah, how much time do we have? I could do like 3 hours on
give us the
Tel
2-minute
Aviv.
rundown and include, by the way,
Yeah.
include the fact that Tel Avivians are a target in this war.
Yeah.
And they've been in their bomb shelters and it's been intense and they've been demonstrating nonstop in case you missed that.
Yeah.
So speak on life in Tel Aviv over the last year.
I mean, life in Tel Aviv in general is beautiful. It's amazing. Anyone who knows me, I'm obsessed with Tel Aviv. It has the most incredible people, down to earth. You could strike up a conversation with anybody, and they feel like they're your brother or your sister.
Good
the
food.
beaches, good food, good energy. People are happy. They're smiling, and there's just good parties, good religious life. Also, there's Chabad. There's all these different communities.
And you're in Israel, like the center.
It's just amazing.
Yeah. So you're saying that you don't regret make Aliyah?
Not even for a second. In fact, when I go away, even on vacation to a beautiful place, I'm so excited to come back to Israel.
So tell people watching who are like, okay, but where did he move from? Did he move from Muncie? Because if it's from Muncie, then no big deal. Aliyah is exciting. But I have a feeling you're not from Muncie.
No, I'm not a Muncie boy. There's always a funny stigma. Is there a stigma with that? Maybe. I don't know.
No, we don't do stigma. Not on this show.
There's no such thing as a stigma. Yeah. So I'm originally from Englewood, New Jersey. I lived in New York for many years. I guess my Aliyah story starts off where I got married at the age of 23 years old. My wife at the time always wanted to make Aliyah. That was her thing. I grew up in a Zionist home, but never thinking that was, that we should move to Israel. We're just like, yeah, let's go to the Israeli Day parades. Let's support Israel by going there, on vacation.
But we're in America.
Yeah,
we have Sunday here.
Yeah,
and right.
Exactly. We have Sundays.
Right.
Yeah. And so we got married. She's like, I have to live in Israel. And so this was not something that we saw eye to eye on. And we basically decided to just push it aside, to not talk about it. And
kick the can down the road.
Exactly. Shove it under the rug for a little bit. And 6 months into our marriage, she's like, okay, I have to live in Israel. And I was like, and I saw how much it meant to her. So I was like, okay, we'll move, which was a crazy thing for me to agree to at the time. Absolutely insane.
I know, but you strike me as someone who's a risk taker. I'm surprised you weren't like, yeah, let's just move anywhere. Israel, great.
So I think I'm more of that adventurous type now. I definitely am. I'm definitely more of a risk taker. But it was so foreign to me.
Right.
But I knew also, I try and remove myself from the personal situation, be objectively, is this thing good? And I knew it was. It wasn't something that I was comfortable with.
It's like a
but
gut
I knew
feeling.
Objectively, I know it's a good thing. Raising kids here in Israel, being in your ancestral homeland, all of these things I knew were good. I just wasn't there.
I would say the hardest thing about making Aliyah is not coming to Israel, it's leaving America. Because when you're there, it's so comfortable and everything is so familiar, and Israel just feels so far, and everything's in a different language.
I'm going to say something super controversial, though. You ready?
Oh, by all means, this is the Weekly Squeeze.
I think that's what makes people in America really soft and weak, impatient, and a lot of people are just unhappy because everything is easy and no matter what you want, you can get it at the snap of your fingers.
You could demand it.
You could demand it. And that creates, imagine if you treated your kids like that. Your kids would end up like a bunch of Can we say bag?
Why are you talking about my kids? I'm just kidding.
Like it just, and so, but these are the types of human beings that we're now creating with the advent of new technology and just, instant gratification. And in Israel, there's a struggle. And that struggle
Kids
defines...
are so much better off here. I'm all jokes aside, my kids are remarkable and resilient. I'm starting to think, by the way, that resilient is a word for suckers. But the fact is that my kids are extremely resilient and they just roll with the punches. School starting, war, not war, surfing camp, life continues. Yeah. They have good values and they're not spoiled because nobody is coming from Amazon to deliver anything that they put in their cart ever.
Yeah.
So...
Yep. Exactly. 100%. I agree. So anyway, I agreed to make Aliyah. I said, we'll do it. She's like, I need to know when. I said, how about 10 years? She said, how about tomorrow? And we compromised on 5 years because that's what marriage is all about, compromise. And 5 years later, we made Aliyah. And over the course of those 5 years, I went from not wanting to go to accepting it to kind of being interested in it to then actually being really
poster
excited.
Boy. Did you stand in Nefesh B'Nefesh with your sign?
We had signs. We were featured in magazines. We were in El Al's magazine. We were in La Isha. We were in Nefesh B'Nefesh stuff. I mean, we were the poster
came with
children.
all the bells and whistles. It's actually quite remarkable because when I was a kid and people moved to Israel, like you never heard from them again. Like there was barely electricity here. There were generators. No joke for people watching. The electricity here went out before, and the generator went on. And we're on a moshav in Israel. Yeah. So now you come, and everything is way more comfortable. Mm-hmm. And still, people are like, "Oh my gosh, it's so hard in Israel, and it's so hard." And that's just the grocery store.
Yeah, I find that, I've met a lot of people in the last year, just through my work, my volunteering, and just me being a social person. And I've met a lot of people that have moved here since October 7th. Since
October 7th. Wow.
And it's just, it's crazy. It's remarkable. You see these unbelievable human beings who are like, I know that my place here, I belong here in Israel. And it's beautiful to see, what Am Yisrael did, what the nation of Israel did. They said, I don't care if there's a war going on. I don't care that it's dangerous or it's unsettling. I might not have a job. I don't know what I'm going to be doing. I know that my soul and my purpose is to be in Israel. And we saw a lot of people that never, ever thought about it for a second making Aliyah. And it's
that's
beautiful.
Been twofold because they're now officially running away from Chutz La'aretz to Israel.
Yeah.
And second of all, because there is, like you said, this yearning to be next to your brothers and sisters in such a perilous time.
Yeah.
And that leads me to what you were doing, because you're single and ready to mingle in Tel Aviv. But instead of doing what many single and ready to mingle people do, or not even single, all kinds of people do in Tel Aviv, you're avoiding that lifestyle completely. And you're participating in Chabad, and you're inspiring people. And you were right there in the hostage forum. And we're going to talk about that. Feeling the hostage family's pain, doing whatever you can to facilitate that everything about our hostages should be plastered around the world, thanks to millions of people who showed up to do that. But that was an effort, and that took a team of people to do. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the Tel Avivians that you were privileged to know in the last year that did this amazing work, spearheaded by you, most of it. It's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question. A lot to unpack.
Okay, let's start with the Let's start with the hostage forum.
Yeah. Okay. So how did I get to the hostage forum? Let's start with that. So basically, after October 7th, the entire country mobilized, where every civilian was figuring out how they could help volunteer in every aspect. I was volunteering, doing many different things in the beginning of the war, and I got a phone call from a friend who told me that he was volunteering at the hostage and missing families forum. I'm like, what is that? And then I was like, do they need any help? And, my background is recently in influencer marketing. Let me see, can I help? And he's like,
I have a phone and I'm ready to help.
Yeah, let me see what I can do. And he's like, yeah, I actually don't think that there's anyone doing influencer marketing. You know what, just show up. So I showed up, and it's actually quite a funny story because he gave me the address. I show up, and it's chaos.
It doesn't sound like Israel at all.
I don't know. So the interesting part is I don't know if it was that particular day that was chaotic. Like I remember like showing up and like I'm in the elevator and like Wolf Blitzer just like walks right into my elevator. I was like, what? Okay, this is okay. And it just felt like, you know, those scenes in movies that are trying to depict like a chaotic office, like, hello, please hold, hello. Like the secretaries were just like directing people where to go. It just was crazy. And I show up and I'm like, hey, like, I want to help. Like, this is my background. They're like, oh, just wait for somebody and ask for this person, ask for this person. And I'm like, I asked people and they're like, I don't know who that is. And I'm like literally sitting in like the lobby lounge area. And I'm just like, I don't know, like, I'll wait for this person. And then all of a sudden I hear someone say, Brian? And I like look and it's like this CMO who I used to work with at one of my old jobs. She's like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm here to help. She's like, great, join my marketing team and let's see how we can do it. And then ultimately what I was coming to do was to figure out how I can launch an influencer program. And so before we get to how I did that, the funny part is the next day I showed up and I was like, yeah, I'm going to continue doing this. I showed up and all of it was gone. There was no posters up. There was no secretaries. And it was like a scene from a movie where you'd like bring a friend and you'd be like, I swear it was all here. I promise. They moved.
They forgot to tell you?
Yeah, nobody told me. I wasn't in the WhatsApp group.
That's a great story.
But it was because I was only there one day.
They forgot to tell Brian.
Yeah.
They forgot to tell Brian the new
like
kid.
A scene from a movie.
That's great. That's great.
And so great. I found a new location, and so my aim was to figure out how I could get influencers to be strong advocates for the hostages, to tell their stories. And it's a very long story, and we had a lot of successful initiatives. It started off with working with food influencers, getting them to tell the story of a hostage based upon the food that they like to eat or cook while telling their story. It was just
I don't think people
beautiful.
realized what a grassroots effort it was to publicize the lives and stories and details of every hostage situation to the world at large in all these languages, on every platform, in every format, often trying to squeeze people's stories into 90-second clips and getting those to go viral. This takes a lot of time to upload and edit. You're like, I know. So,
you know what? No one's... You brought up a really good point, which most people don't ask. They just like, they assume, oh, okay, you just reach out to these influencers. But what I was working on, the first effort that I started, the first initiative was this food influencer, we called it Recipes for Return. And I had to figure out how to find what these hostages liked to eat or cook. And there was like maybe a few profiles, and they had like bios and profiles. There was a data team, coordinate with them, do a search to find. And in the end, there wasn't enough. And so I had to meet with these families to hear their story. And so, you know, after about 2 weeks of being at the forum, I'm now sitting with these families, and that first time where I like went over to a family.
Can you share which family?
I don't remember exactly who it was. There was a lot of different families, but I just remember like mustering up the courage to just say, okay, I gotta go, and just
I'm here to help.
And like, I want to hear your son, your daughter, your brother, your father's story.
So I heard a few stories also. I've been to challah bakes where women get together and they do it for shot challah, and I sing sometimes, and I meet the mothers and the sisters, and they're as broken as they were on day one. I mean, we all saw Hirsch's mom screaming at the funeral. Like, this is not something that gets easier with time.
Yeah,
it gets more painful with time.
100%,
So you're thinking about the hostages, you're living their harsh realities, and you're promoting it on social media. And this brings you into a whole new sphere where you're corresponding with all these big names in the Jewish world who have huge audiences, not just Jewish audiences around the world. We have social media influencers on TikTok and Instagram and some on Facebook that reach hundreds of millions of people around the world and have a real big influence on what they think and in general, because this is how social media works, on what they wear and what they like and what they buy. You know, social media for people with hundreds of thousands of followers is often a business.
Yeah.
So you tapped into something that was happening simultaneously while Israel's having this war. There's this war going on online where social media influencers, besides the fact that they're being abused in their inboxes, reported, harassed, their accounts are being taken down, shadow banned. I mean, the situation till today is it's really awful and unfair. On top of that, they're losing businesses. They're losing their brand deals that they have. I mean, I never did fashion on social media. You might be surprised to learn. But I know for many people, this is their bread and butter. It puts food on the table. So tell people listening who think that being on TV or on social media or on a screen means that you're rich and famous. Besides for me, everyone else, besides for the ones who, you know, truly Hashem is blessed, most of the social media influencers are really having a hard time.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, especially in the beginning of the war, I don't think that people really, you know, the influencers that started standing up for Israel and the hostages, they didn't care. They're like, I am going to do everything I can to stand up for these hostages, to post about it and to get involved. And, you know, you mentioned that influencers, you know, they typically have brand partnerships. Anybody who calls them up and says, hey, can you do this thing? It's like, okay, great. That's going to cost you money. And I was messaging from the hostage forum and I was saying, can you do this thing for us? But there's no budget. Like we can't pay you. And like, they didn't even, nobody asked. It was just like, sure, of course, no problem. Sure. Like we're happy to do it. Like, of course. And
Michael Rappaport devoted his entire Instagram account to the hostages.
Yeah.
And so many others.
Yeah. Many others.
Every single day, all day.
Till today. And these aren't simple things. You know, we were talking about the production of a podcast and what goes into that. These, making a video, making a reel, these are not simple things. And there's a reason why influencers charge for it, not just because this is their livelihood, but because it takes a lot of time
and money.
And they're like, and money. And so they were happy to do it. And I remember there were a few influencers there were many influencers, dozens of influencers that took part in this the recipes for return campaign. And there were two videos in particular that like really got to me, that were so emotional, made me very emotional.
I don't follow any food influencers, so I'm just like
sure,
totally
I'm gonna tell people. One was Sivan's Kitchen.
Sivan
is amazing. And the other one is The Chef's Wife.
Yeah, sure. From Crown Heights.
So
nice.
So there are two videos. These two videos made me cry when I watched it, and every time I watch it again, every single time I cry. And I had the privilege of taking that whole thing full circle, because I met with these families. I said, what does your son like to eat? And I remember speaking with, I'm blanking on his name, the hostage that was freed.
Say it when it comes to you.
Okay, we'll get to it. Sorry, he wasn't freed. He was rescued. I'm totally blanking on his name. And wow. Okay. We'll plug it in here. Yeah. So he was rescued, and I remember I sat with his uncle, and I wanted to find out, okay, tell me his story, and also what does he like to eat? And he likes to eat spicy shakshuka. And so, great, made a profile, his whole story, spicy shakshuka, and then we would reach out to influencers and we tried to find out, okay, great, you know, which profile, like, and then so the chef's wife, she said, great, I want to work on his story. And she made this video, and I showed it to his uncle and his mother. They both were crying. They felt, and the mother was telling us in Hebrew, she's like, I feel like I'm speaking to my son right now.
Wow. That's intense.
And I was just like, we were just all crying together.
Wow. So we can't underestimate the impact that social media, the Jewish social media, and not just Jewish, by the way.
Yeah.
There are a number of non-Jews that have been incredibly supportive.
Oh, yeah.
But right now we're talking about a specific community of influencers online. Yeah. So you start dealing with them. You see how empathetic they are. You see how generous and gracious they are with their time, how heartbroken they are, how willing they are to help. I mean, someone like Montana Tucker, Lizzie, these people have, they've just been
non-stop using social media and their own wallets, because traveling to Israel, no one's paying for those tickets, but they know they have to come here and be at Nova, and they have to show the world, and they have to show their audience. So you recognize that they're doing all this, but at the same time they're struggling. So what's your message for people listening who are not influencers, and they're giving money to the IDF, and they're giving money to Hatzalah, and they don't worry about what, perhaps an influencer has to deal with just by showing up online and supporting Israel?
So I think you make a really good point, and
I'm full of good points. That's why I have this beautiful
this is the
set.
weekly squeeze, baby. So I think what's really important to point out is that there's so many different causes that people can get around, right? One of the main causes, of course, is supporting our soldiers, supporting our victims of October 7th. But at the end of the day, it's super important to realize that we have to make sure that our digital warriors have financial support as well. Now, you mentioned a few big names, and, after October 7th, these folks, Michael Rappaport, Montana Tucker, Liz Savetsky, they shifted everything to support this effort, which is unbelievably commendable. And I'm really proud to see many, many folks doing that. I think what people tend to forget is the folks that are smaller, the folks that have 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 followers.
Oh, they're producing some great content.
Amazing content. A lot of them are struggling financially because everyone's saying like, oh, Montana Tucker, like, does she need our money? Of course she's making a living.
I hate to break it to you. We all need everyone's money.
Everyone needs and deserves to make a living, right? But when I say that influencers are struggling to pay rent sometimes, those are the names that they think of. And I want you to think about the ones that are much smaller, that are doing incredible work. These are our digital warriors, our soldiers that are on the front lines, that don't get the stage time like the big names do.
If you're not on social media and you don't know what they do, so they'll, let's say, take a piece of news that just came out, a complete garbage piece of misinformation, and they'll sit and they'll debunk it, and they'll break it apart, and they'll speak to I had Z Silver on the podcast. He's a big Hasbara guy on TikTok, and he's just an American college student. And he sits and he speaks in his Boston accent, and he just breaks down all the nonsense that people are throwing up on TikTok. But you know what? It takes hours a day, and then you get on a Zoom, and then you do a live, and then people want to bring you out, and then before you know it, like, someone has to pay the bills.
And Squarespace is not saying, oh, I want that guy to represent me.
The Zionists. Let's bring the Zionists on board.
Who's talking about the Israel-Palestine conflict. Nobody wants to, brands don't want to touch that. So what happened was, after October 7th, all these influencers that were posting about Israel and the hostages lost their brand deals. Not only did they get harassed, not only did they lose followers, but they lost a major portion of their income. And some of them lost their entire careers. I have stories of influencers who literally lost everything. And nobody was looking out for them. And I saw this firsthand at the hostage forum while I was there. And I was like, this is not sustainable. We're expecting our digital warriors to continue doing this. Not only is there no positive financial incentive, but
they're running on
empty. And no one was looking out for them. So I said,
but how do people help besides I guess you could buy their products and support the brands that they advertise, right?
Well, there wasn't a marketplace for that. Like, it just didn't exist before. I mean, there were a few, Jewish brands that were doing that, but there was no one mobilizing and saying, we need to make sure that there's enough brands supporting these influencers. So
making those connections.
And somebody who was maybe giving all their money to Meta and Mark Zuckerberg saying, you know what? Maybe it's time to say, these are our digital warriors who have stood up for us. Now it's time for us to stand up for them.
Right.
And so that kind of led me
and
to...
by the way, the views are amazing online. I mean, I run an Instagram account, My Beautiful Land of Israel. Sometimes I look at the stats and I'm like, girl, you did great. Because, millions and millions of people can see a reel every couple of days. So there is a market in the Jewish world, because I know, what they say, like, your enemy's always watching. Like, even if so long as they're watching, they're concerned, and they know that you have that you're winning. So we have eyeballs on our accounts that are not followers, and they're just kind of taking the narrative from the side, and that's very valuable. That's really very valuable. So I think it's great that you're trying to make these connections and help the influencers.
Yeah. So that's kind of like how I got into the business that I'm in right now. I realized that this was not sustainable. We're expecting our digital warriors to continue supporting and promoting Israel without, and it being detrimental to their career. So I started this agency called Barzell Media. It supports pro-Israel influencers. And the initial thing that we did was we found Jewish-owned or Israeli-owned brands, or really any brand that was an ally, and we found influencers that were a good match for them. And you didn't have to be doing full-time hasbara, right? You could be doing full-time Jewish advocacy. You could be a beauty influencer that every once in a while posted about the hostages, posted their support for Israel. And great, we have a beauty brand. La Vito is like a brand that, I'm in touch with. Great, here's an Israeli beauty product that you can now push instead of, L'Oreal, who canceled you because you posted about Israel.
Excellent. Brilliant. Amazing. I love it. I'm going to put your links in the show notes. Let's just get into something spiritual for a couple minutes, because we are in an existential war here in Israel, and we can't deny that. I'm not going to ask you your politics or if you demonstrated or not.
I did make a post about it, actually. So controversial post, but yeah.
Oh, I actually
saved
the link because I wanted to read it on the show. I thought it was excellent. So tell me a little bit, though. Tell me a little bit about that. How this war has affected you spiritually. You told me you're very connected to Chabad.
Yep.
Chabad is very much about emunah and faith and joy and learning and putting on tefillin and inspiring our chayalim to do likewise. So tell me a little bit about how Israel has affected you spiritually, your spiritual journey.
Yeah. Wow. It's actually a lot, but
in a nutshell, in 60 words or less.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because I never felt spiritually connected. I had, I got divorced about a year and a half into making Aliyah, and I had this moment where I'm like, okay,
what do I believe?
What do I believe? What do I do now? And so many people I know who got divorced, they're like, all right, I want to be unshackled from anything that's holding me back. I no longer have a wife. I want full freedom. Let's throw away this whole religious thing. And I was like, that's not me. That's not my personality. And also, I'm the type of person that focuses on the positive. I don't focus on the negative things. And so I said, great, there are things that I really don't understand about Judaism that I maybe don't feel so positive about. Let me put those things to the side and let me focus on the things that I do connect with. And I actually remember my first Shabbat in Tel Aviv, I was living on Allenby Street. Allenby is this hustle and bustle. Now it's just full of the construction. But back before the construction, there were retail stores, clothing stores, and everybody would come in from all over the country to go shopping on Allenby Street. It was this hustle and bustle, buses going back and forth, and it was just so busy. And I go up to prepare for Shabbat, to shower, to change, and to get ready to go to shul. And I was on my way to Chabad, and I opened the door to my building. And for the first time in my life, I felt Shabbat.
Wow.
I didn't realize I was going to get emotional.
Right. Like you felt the Shabbos.
I felt Shabbat
envelop you.
Yeah, because there was this serenity, this silence that
I always say, first of all, this is great for everyone. Like content, this video, subscribe on YouTube.
Wow.
But first of all, I feel Shabbos very strongly here. It's something in the light, it's something in the air, and it's something in the fact that everyone, or a lot of people in your space, are aware that it's a holy day and that something changes. So
sometimes it's actually the opposite. So there was a few things that were happening there, and I'll talk about also what Shabbat is like in Tel Aviv. But what happened in that moment was everything stopped, right? And Allenby is this beautiful contrast because the buses don't run on Shabbat. They're now Shabbat buses, but it's a different story. And it just became quiet because all those stores closed for Shabbat. And I remember feeling Shabbat, and I remember walking to shul, and I was like, this is what I want to feel, this type of connection, this type of spirituality. And I remember walking to shul, and the entire way to shul, I was singing Yedid Nefesh, not in my head, out loud, which is like crazy to, I don't know. It's not something that I would do.
What I'm hearing is that you don't have to be in Bnei Brak or Yerushalayim. You could be in Tel Aviv.
There's so much spirituality in Tel Aviv and beautiful Judaism that exists. And it's more special because you don't expect it. And there's pockets. And it's the contrast sometimes that surprises you. And sometimes the thing that everybody else is doing, like if you're in Yerushalayim, okay, everyone's keeping Shabbat, so it can feel less special. But when you're keeping Shabbat in Tel Aviv, you are special, and you're bringing a light to everybody around you.
All the way, that's it. Hook, line, and sinker, Chabad has got you.
Yeah, for sure. But it really is true, and there's so many special moments, and I'm just thinking of, and these moments happen literally all the time in Tel Aviv. My Rabbi Eli Nedich, can tell you a zillion stories like this, but there's one special moment. I might cry for this one too, but on October 7th, we were in shul. There weren't many of us, but a lot of us just didn't know exactly what was going on when we showed up to shul. And so there were probably like, I don't know, maybe 70 of us, women and men. And it was crazy chaotic day, but I'll just share one story from it. It was towards the afternoon. So like, I think it was Simchat Torah. So the day was like crazy, crazy long. And the rabbi at one point went home to check on his kids. And on his way home, he relayed this story in shul to us. And he says, I was walking back, and a man and a woman approached me, and the man was wearing his army uniform. And the woman approached the rabbi and said, Rabbi, can you please give my boyfriend a bracha right now? And he gave him a bracha, like right on the spot. And it was just like this, they didn't appear to be religious at all, like, tchiloni looking. And it was just, there was more detail to the story, but it was just this powerful moment that, first off, we are in something serious. And there was another moment that I remember, it was in between like Musaf and I guess Mincha. We went to my friend's house, and there's like moments where you realize something is serious. And I think this was one of those moments. Of course, we just were seeing people like, pack their bags, and Chayalim just like, just get in their cars. It was that was a serious moment. But I remember we were walking to my friends, and I see one of our friends who is dati, he is religious. I see him on a scooter, and he's wearing a t-shirt. And because of the way the cars were, I could only see the top half of him, but I saw he's obviously on a scooter the way he's holding. And I'm like, I was surprised to see, like, I know he keeps Shabbat. And then he clears away from the cars, and you see he's wearing the green army pants. And I was like, wow, he's being called out.
Yeah. Oh, we've all been, I don't want to say, God forbid, desensitized. If anything, sensitized. Mm-hmm. We're more sensitive, I think, than ever. Yeah. Yeah, because it's been intense. I mean, how many tears have we cried over the last year?
Yep.
And at the end of the day, what's most impressive to me is that we're still here putting in as much energy as we did on day one. And listen, I met you from social media. You have an active account. You're sharing things. You're, like you said earlier, making these connections. And I'm proud to be a part of it. I'm proud to be a part of a community that has been there to help. And it's a sad story, and we're not at the end. Mm-hmm. And we have to keep pushing, and we have to keep fighting. And it seems like unsurmountable obstacles lay in front of us. But I think this is something we could all agree on: the achdus, the unity, the willingness to put our egos last and really just get down to the heart of the matter and be like, we're all in this together. Yep. We're going to help each other. A hand helps a hand.
Yep.
And that's how we're getting through it all.
Yeah.
So
I think it's interesting because, you mentioned the Achdut, and you mentioned how we have to just like persevere. I guess we alluded to my controversial Instagram post. And one of the things that I realized, I'm like, how are we tearing ourselves apart right now when we just lost 6 hostages? Like, why is that our response? And I was trying to figure, and there were, I don't know, somebody said 300,000, hundreds of thousands of Tel Avivians showed up.
Furious Tel Avivians.
And they were angry.
Not just Tel Avivians, from all over the country.
From all over the country showed up to protest. And for me, my perspective, which seemed controversial as I was writing it, but to me it was logical. My perspective was, why are you directing your anger towards the democratically elected government? You can disagree with them, but direct your anger the day after towards the perpetrators. Because right now, our enemies are seeing it.
They're loving it.
And they're loving it. And if our enemies are
like
loving what
controls.
you're doing, that means you're not doing the right thing. And we could talk about the complexities of the deals and negotiations, and let's not get into that. But I was trying to figure out what is compelling people to do this right now. And I realized it is just really simple. People need to feel like they can do something. And they can't influence Hamas. They can't go in and extract these hostages themselves. So what can they do? Well, they can go out in the street and protest. And that's why protests happen. But there's no footage of people not protesting, people saying, I think that we need to direct our anger towards Hamas. But if you feel helpless and there's a democratically elected government that you feel that you can influence, then that is your outlet. That is the only thing that you can do. But the problem is,
I understand the behavior. I understand
The problem is that it's not the helpful thing to do in this moment.
No, it's just like,
in my opinion.
Yeah, like if in my opinion, if a toddler has a meltdown, like I get that they're falling apart and they're overtired and exhausted and everything, but nobody wants to deal with a screaming toddler. It only makes things worse. So, Brian, where can people find you, your business and your Instagram accounts?
Sure, you could find me Barzel Media. It's barzel.media on Instagram. At SPIBRA85.
If you're a Shatrin?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I am single. Single father. So, yeah.
You can reach through the Weekly Squeeze. I'm going to get the Shatranis.
Oh, boy.
And and in Tel Aviv. If people come to Israel.
And I'm in Tel Aviv. If you want to experience beautiful Tel Aviv, hit me up. It is one of the most remarkable cities in the world. And Shabbos in Tel Aviv, if you haven't experienced it, come to Chabad, come to Tel Aviv, enjoy it, and you'll be blown away.
Amazing. I'm blown away. Brian, thank you so much for being
here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Chanale.
So there you have it, episode 213 of the Weekly Squeeze with Chanale. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, like, and rate the podcast. Share it in a WhatsApp group. Order some Queen Tulsi to keep you calm. That's why I'm so chill all the time. Your story. And make sure you are following all our socials at Chanale Music. My beautiful land of Israel, wherever you are, stay safe, and I will see you next week. All feeling the weight of stress these days, but did you know there's an all-natural supplement that can help you feel calmer, less moody, and more rested? Meet Queen Tulsi, a powerful blend created by a mom who was tired of feeling overwhelmed, but didn't want to turn to pharmaceuticals. Listeners of the Weekly Squeeze podcast can use code QueenChanale for 15% off at CarolineBassHealth.com. Experience the natural, calm Queen Tulsi brings into your life. CarolineBassHealth.com.